Welcome, everybody, to Good Morning Cannabis. I have the lovely Emily Seelman with me, and we're going to do a little special thing for Good Morning Cannabis. I asked Emily to pop on so we could talk a little bit about what would be helpful to our listeners when they're thinking about who should be part of their team. And as Emily, you know, I wear the hat, and I say it's the hat of possibilities, and that either the hat could be tipped to being a possibility of failure or a possibility of success. And it really requires using your own mind, but also attracting like-minded people to be part of your team. So this is a topic that I'm passionate about. I know that you're passionate about it too. So I'm going to start off by just maybe letting people know a little bit about you. I know that I've interviewed you in the past, but give maybe the summary edition of the big tomb of your life of Emily. So go, and then we'll get right into the discussion.
Of course. Emily Seelman. I am the founder and CEO of Canna Business Services. So we're a full service consulting firm. We support people when they're first getting into the industry, all the way through when they're licensed and building out and looking to scale their businesses or grow. So I started in the industry back in it was 2016 when medical cannabis was being introduced to Pennsylvania, and I was a practicing attorney there. And I saw a real need for consultants that provided much better work product than what was happening at the time. And back then they were charging a green tax on top of it. And that's something you and I talk about a lot, which is where a lot of service providers will add on extra fees and costs because you're in the cannabis industry and they can take advantage of you. And I saw that happening at the time, and really thought there could be a big difference in this industry if people actually supported new entrants into the industry a lot better. So I left the firm, I started my own consultancy, and that's what we have today. So we've got writers and editors all across the country, and we support people all over the world. So we're really, really happy.
Yeah, and we love you, Emily, so that I'm feeling very confident when I'm referring someone to you, because you do have those things that I look for as a really solid team member for a client. But let's just kind of chat, when you're advising your clients and they're looking for whatever it may be, insurance or accounting or attorneys, what are some of the things that you are telling them that they really need to look for before they engage someone?
Well, we always like to do our own vetting of third-party service providers that can support our clients. I think it starts even before that. A lot of things that I'm seeing, the same mistakes that can be made when they're looking for insurance providers, CPAs, attorneys, happens really in the beginning when they're just getting into the industry. They found a state that they want to work in, or maybe they're trying to figure out what state they want to have experience in the cannabis industry in. And so they start calling consultants and attorneys and CPAs and insurance providers, and it's kind of scattershot. And I would say avoid that approach and start, I think, with the three foundational groups that you need. One is your consultant, your attorney, and your CPA. Those are the three that I think are your foundations that you need to get started. If you do those three things correctly, everything else really falls into place well. And I say that because your consultant should be experienced in the cannabis industry, of course, but they should be able to help you vet other groups as well. And they should be able to project manage for you so that you're not going down a rabbit hole of a vendor you don't need and you're wasting time. I mean, time is against you during these application rounds if you're applying for a license. And really, there's so much competition that if you make a misstep, that could cost you so much money, so much time. It could cost you a license. So my recommendation is to get those three groups selected first: your consultant, your attorney, and your CPA. Specifically with the attorney and the CPA, make sure they understand the cannabis industry. And that is what I love about you guys. We vetted you in the beginning and we tested you out, with some clients, and we were very open with our clients to say, hey, we haven't worked with them before, but we've talked to them, we vetted them, we really like their experience. Why don't you give them a call and see if you like them? And they did, and they liked you, and then they worked with you. And we have had glowing feedback from our clients about you and your services, your team, and your services that you provide. And I think that's really important. So we can do the very best we can. We vet everybody that comes in the door. And then, because we know some of the questions to ask. And I think that's some of the things we want to talk about today is how do you do your own vetting in a good way?
Right. So let's get right into it. What is some of the questions that you're going to be asking the professionals? And you can be specific or you can be more general in the groups.
Yeah. th- I love this part because I think we've both met people who have made missteps and it's cost them a lot of money and it's
Yes.
aggravation. You put so much into these applications. They're massive commitments of time and energy and funding. So you want to make sure that you minimize the errors and the learning curve. And if you pick the right consultant, you'll do that. So
Right.
how do you pick the right consultant? For me, what I noticed, because we do a lot of corrective work as well. So many of our clients come to us because they found someone else that was super cheap, or they maybe weren't super cheap, but they promised the world. And then they come to us and say they botched it, or, oh my gosh, the communication was terrible, or they didn't provide me the stuff I needed, or you know, it's been like across the board, that same type of feedback. So I think this is a really important conversation to have. And we were at a speaking engagement a few weeks ago where I touched on this as well. And I think for a consultant, when you first start looking at consultants, you want to make sure you're asking the right types of questions, because everyone always asks, what's your win rate? What are you about? What states do you work in? What's your win rate? I think those states or those questions might be a little too broad. I think understanding their background, understanding what states they've worked in is important. When it comes to asking what your win rate is, I would start to get a little more granular. So I would ask specifically, what is your win rate in competitive states versus non-competitive states? And what role did you play in those states? Because what I've seen is the tendency for some consultants to try to manipulate those numbers, because they may provide partial services, like maybe templated work product, and that person takes those templates and wins. Well, that's not really a fair picture of how that consultant helped, because if it was taking templates in an easy state and they won, I would, if I was a client, I would want to know that, because if I'm hiring that consultant to be my project manager, then that's not really accurately portraying what they've done and what they would do for me. So I would make sure, what capacity did they work on those projects? And when I say competitive versus non-competitive state, I mean the states that were hyper, they have a ton of people applying, they're
Right.
limited licenses,
Right.
and they've got a really strict deadline, and they're very narrative heavy, versus a non-competitive state where it's rolling application window. Maybe the window doesn't shut and you can just submit whenever you want. They're more of a form online or an online portal or something like that. That's a lot easier. So by example, Oklahoma, Arizona, New Mexico, those were easier applications. Now, Arizona ended up in a lottery system, which
Right.
makes it a little more competitive, but New Mexico and Oklahoma, we could do those all day. And we do, for especially when a lot of people are going into that state, we were doing those like every week. So I could literally say to someone, we've got a 100% win rate. And that's not fair to the person asking me, because there's competitive states. These are
Right.
the ones that are so hard to win a license in. And we could do our absolute best and our client could do the absolute best, but you have no idea the underworkings of what's happening in that state, who's lobbying, who's shaking hands with someone. So Georgia's a great example, Pennsylvania, Florida, like those. Ohio's medical round, not the most recent one, that was less competitive, but the rounds before that were competitive. New Jersey, competitive. 2018 and 19, New Jersey were competitive. They were the medical cannabis rounds. So what you'll usually see is medical cannabis rounds are a lot more competitive. Adult use tries to open up the industry more to people.
Sure.
So it may still be competitive. It may still be narrative heavy, like New Jersey, but it's New Jersey right now is a little bit of a hybrid. So I would ask them to get a lot more detailed about how they're answering that question, because I have seen that happen where people work only in Colorado and they're like, we have a 100% win rate. Well, that's because Colorado gives the authority to local municipalities to decide. That's where the competition is. What's their experience on the local level in winning competitive applications there? So we've got experience in both of those places. I think someone's competitive win rate should be lower than their non-competitive win rate. If they're giving you a 94% win rate in competitive states, which is what I've seen, every consultant says 94%, 97%. How does everybody getting 94, 97% win rates in competitive states? It's not possible. So people are lying. So that's your first way. I think that's the biggest thing you need to ask. And I think the second biggest is, how is their team structured? And this could go for a lot of different consultants types, service types, but consultants for the application services and project management, are they outsourcing their team?
Good point.
Because we are actually, my company is, you know, a lot of people say we're the consultants to the consultants, because we have a lot of consulting firms that hire us to do the work. And so we have our own clients, and some of our clients are consultants who advertise themselves as application consultants, but they don't actually do it. They outsource it to us. So, you know, that can create a very fractured application. When it comes to us, we do a phenomenal job of project managing it. We're hyper focused on that. We're super detailed on that. We've seen just about anything that can happen in the cannabis space, so we can help people dodge a lot of bullets. But it's really unfortunate when I see, you know, we put a lot of work and effort into these apps, and then maybe it gets, for a portion of it, it gets handed off to the hired consultancy, and then it becomes fractured, timelines are missed, and you just kind of see that client just start to sink down in a disappointment. And so you know, that would be my recommendation, those two things, for a consultant. For a CPA and a lawyer, I would ask, obviously, what states are they practicing in? What is their experience in providing the specific service you're requesting? Right. So sometimes people need compliance SOPs, tax compliance SOPs, like we're seeing in New Jersey with our clients. Sometimes they need financials built. Sometimes they need financials that are specific for an application. Sometimes they need financials that are investor facing. And those are different types of conversations. So, and business plans and things like that. So I think it might be a great thing to ask you is what would you want people to look for if they were vetting CPA firms?
Yeah, so what I would probably say is that the real important question is, do they have team members who are dedicated in this space? Now, what I found is that once cannabis became legal in our state, in New Jersey, and then also New York and some of the other states, it seemed like every CPA firm put on their website that they did cannabis. And then I find the same folks showing up for different events, really not knowing anything about cannabis. They're interested, and that's, no, okay, so that's fine. This is an emerging industry. But yeah, are there dedicated people who not only understand the cannabis accounting function, tax function, but do they even understand the industry? You know, one of the first things that I did was I really, because I wanted to be completely into this, I actually took a course and have my master's in cannabis. It sounds better than it actually is, but it's with the CTU, but it really gave me a good broad background in every element of cannabis. So it's the firm that they're working with, is they're experts in that field who understand all aspects of it. I will grant you that this is emerging and we're all kind of learning. I mean, this is really relatively new industry, but at least having dedicated people, that's one of the important things. And then also, like you said, their experience, what have they been doing? And how are they continuing to learn? Like, what is their process for continuing to learn in this ultra changing environment? And the other item is, do I really feel good about the relationship? See, that's always the personal touch, which I know you also have spoken about. Do I feel good about working with this person? I mean, do I feel like they're part of my team, or are they just looking at me like, you know, a big dollar sign?
Yeah, that's really, I think your point specifically about people slapping the cannabis lawyer or cannabis CPA on their door. And I've seen that happen a lot, but you're right. A lot of people start into the industry, so we have to make room for that, like you said. Right. But at the same time, are they charging you $500, $700 an hour as an attorney, and they don't actually have cannabis experience? And a CPA, and you'll find this out if you're operating a cannabis business, IRS code 280E is your best. It can either be your best friend because you understand it and you're in line with it, or your worst nightmare. Now, everyone hates it for a good reason. It basically, I don't know, you could probably explain it better than me, but you can't claim deductions for a little short of it, but
it sucks.
It sucks. But you have to abide by it because you're going to get audited. And my deepest concern when clients are looking for CPAs are, how are they going to help them navigate 280E? Because you don't want them to start with someone who's never navigated it before, and they're going to make their mistakes with you. And so that's my biggest concern with it. That's why I trust you guys. But Same with a lawyer. There are so many specifics that you need to start out correctly with. So your operating agreement, I think there's a couple things with attorneys. I've seen some attorneys hold themselves out as consultants, which is a huge no-no. You cannot do that. So a good attorney that specializes in cannabis will understand where they fit into this puzzle. And they're the ones who can help you look at contracts. They can help you with your operating agreement, which is so important in this space, because the way you structure your team can radically change between states and their regulations. And then navigating just the regulations and the ever-changing rules when a state is drafting its rules. Like New Jersey is still drafting rules for certain license types.
Right.
So you need someone who's going to be able to quickly read the regulations and understand them. And so that law firm will know that for the application preparation portion and project management, that needs to be your cannabis consultant. And then for the legal aspects of it, that's your lawyer. A good consultant will help you navigate when you need to go to a lawyer, when you don't need to use your lawyer, when you go to your CPA, when you can make these decisions yourself, or where we can help you navigate them. A bad consultant will not help you navigate those things. And unfortunately, it's usually too late. You've made a big down payment on your application fee, your consulting fee. And that's the thing that we like to help people avoid, because it's a big monetary commitment. I would say just don't go for someone who's super, super cheap. Because they're usually you're going to be the one that comes to us and asks to correct your application. And that's time delays. That's delays where you could be getting local approvals and competing there and getting your license. So it could literally cost you a license because you wanted to save $10,000 or $5,000. It would be a huge mistake to just look at cost, but also at the same time, you don't necessarily have to go to the consulting firm that promises the world. So if you've got a consulting firm that promises to do your financial projections, I would say question that a little bit. Do they have finance people on their team? Do they have a CPA on their team? Are they outsourcing to a CPA firm? Are they promising to do your preliminary drawings? Great. Well, who's actually doing it? Do they actually know what they're doing? Do they have design and build out experience? So that would be, we don't do financials. We've had people come to us and ask us if we do. I would say we would be doing you a disservice if we did, because that's like getting a brain surgeon to try to fix your broken arm. You want your brain surgeon focused on your brain. You want someone else to focus on other parts of your body. So that's not that I'm comparing myself to a brain surgeon, because they do something way crazier than I do. But,
me too. I get it.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. And I guess, so one of the red flags to me, whenever I'm talking to professionals, is that when it is really the cheapest, a low cost provider, I'm always a little bit nervous. The folks who you say they're going to charge $5,000 when everyone else is charging 15, and you find out it's just that person and another person who's just churning the business the business plans out. And we right now, like you said, we have folks coming to us to fix their business plans, their financial projections, because they're not really based on anything that's reasonable or logical. So maybe talk a little bit about what you found in your space about the low cost providers.
I've found that oftentimes that they're low cost and they're probably just templated narratives that don't really speak to the applicant. So when we get a group that comes to us, or a person that comes to us and say, I want to apply for a license, they have different budgets. So we customize what we do based on that. But there are groups out there that say, we're going to provide you your full application, but it's just this template that they've handed out to 50 other people. So when you're in a competitive space, how do you differentiate yourself? If a state is saying, we're going to give out 6 licenses, heck, Illinois is a great example. They gave out outs before the debacle of grading and the lawsuits happened in the state. They were giving out, there were over 4,000 applications submitted for 75 dispensary licenses. So if you're going to get a templated application that is going to look like everybody else and it's not customized to you, you're going to get lost in that group of over 4,000 applicants. So that would be my recommendation, is to understand better what they're doing for you and why they're coming in at such a low cost. I think even really well versed people who come to us and they write very well, professionals so they could take a template and modify it to themselves. What is that costing you in time and effort and energy? So we've had a lot of people who say, yeah, we got these templates, they're terrible. We fix them up and we did the best we could. And they're really great in their industry. So they've brought it to a much higher level, but it's still not there. It's
Right.
still not necessarily compliant with the regulations. It's still not, there's so many things that we've learned about the way a state grades an application because we've been in every state that has a program.
Right.
So we can use some of that knowledge and say, I understand why you wrote it this way, but this is actually not the best way. And so we help them avoid a lot of those pitfalls that you won't necessarily get when you're going for the low cost provider. I think if there's one area that you should not go low cost, it's when you're in this application phase of things. And of course, there are people who are on budgets, and it's easy for me to say, don't go low cost. I understand that. And there's ways you can customize it with a good consulting firm that meets your budget without just going for a low cost provider who throws templates at you, walks away, and then you're left saying, oh my gosh, I have to pay someone else now on top of all of this to fix it. Yeah. That would be the nightmare.
So Emily, this is really good. So how could people, we're wrapping it up now. How could people get in touch with you? We'll put in the show notes your contact information, but a quick way to get a hold of you would be how?
I mean, my email address is emily@cannabusinessservices.com. It's probably easiest if you go online because we've got like a Calendly link. You can sign up for 15 minutes to talk to us for free. I know some consultants charge to talk to you. I would say avoid those people. But yeah, if you could go on our website and you could go through the intake there, it'll either be me or our director of operations, Beth Panicucci. She's amazing too. You would love her.
I like Beth too.
I know, she's so awesome. So yeah, it would be one of us. We try to take all of those calls because I've been on the receiving end of calls with consultants and law firms where I'm stuck talking to someone who's actually not the person I want to talk to. So we make an effort for it to either be me or Beth on the phone. So that would be the best way.
Emily, again, a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Cannabis, and we'll be talking real soon.
Thank you so much, Todd.
Bye.
Bye.